the lights were off, but we're all completely naked going, this is just... And we kept getting told, no, you can't see anything, you can't see anything. Meanwhile, we could see the front row going... doing that sort of face.
Welcome to lucky number 13, the 13th episode of Season 2 of 30 Minute Call, proudly produced by the Canberra Theatre Centre. We're here on Ngunnawal country and we pay our respects to the traditional custodians of this land, the Ngunnawal people and their elders, past, present and emerging. Yarn and hello, my name is Joe Gleeson and today's guest is Jarrad West, one of the founders of Canberra-based theatre company Everyman Theatre. They have put on many a show at CTC. So today, Jarrad joins us to not just talk about getting nude on stage, we're going to talk about his whole journey from dancer at a school assembly to actor, director and company owner. So let's get into it. Jarrad West, this is your 30-minute call. He's come all the way out to the Chifley Studios. Can you believe it? On a sunny, bright spring day here in the nation's capital. If we look outside, we can see my neighbour Jeff. And
Hi, Jeff. Wake up, Jeff.
Wake up, Jeff. And some of the bins outside as well. So it's lovely. Jarrad West from Everyman Theatre. Hello, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's
Mate,
a lovely day to be out in Chifley.
Yeah, and the first time I've had a guest in the flesh. Which
I know, I love it. He's
exciting.
just for the listeners. He set up a table with a tablecloth and everything.
Well, I thought that the table was, it's basically I've dragged a trestle table in from the shed.
Oh.
And I thought this sounds a little
You've even got
rough.
He's got two tablecloths on it for a bit of sound dampening, I think, or maybe just a nice decor moment. Who knows?
My interior decorator is coming out. Mate, thank you for joining us on the podcast, for agreeing to come out and having a bit of a chat to us.
It's my pleasure.
We are super keen to get plenty of our sort of, I guess, the regular faces that you see around the Canberra art scene, yourself being one of them, of course. Everyman Theatre, founded in 2008.
Yes.
I believe.
Yes.
Mate, it's 12 years.
Yeah. Never expected that. It's one of those things that we started just based on a three guys going, hey, let's do some theatre, and then it sort of grew and morphed, and more people became interested in working with us, and we wanted to do that stuff that wasn't really seen in the independent sense here in Canberra. There was you sometimes can have really, really avant-garde stuff that maybe doesn't attract will attract one particular audience, and then we wanted to be able to do the stuff that was sort of left of centre but still mainstream enough to bring people in and to educate people, I guess. I know that sounds like a really awful term, but that sort of feeling of, oh, okay, that's something different, I want to go and see it. So and then we're on to I think 23 shows now over the however long.
So what's that? That's about 2 a year.
Yeah,
apart from 2020,
the bin fire that is this year. Well, this year we were meant to be doing Romeo and Juliet.
Oh wow!
So and that was cancelled unceremoniously quite quickly once we all locked down, which is a real shame because Chris Zuber, who is one of the directors of Everyman, he had been working on it for 18 months. It was sort of a passion project of his.
Wow.
And then we were all set to go and all, in the Q season for this year, and was cancelled via email basically, which was a real shame, and I know Chris was upset, and the cast as well. It was all cast. They were just about to start rehearsals. So. Yeah.
And I guess that's one of the things that people aren't familiar with, how theatre works. If suddenly there's a green light and says, hey, you guys, there's no doubt you'll be able to put on a show.
Yeah.
You can't just suddenly go, sweet, we're ready in 1 week's time.
Yeah, exactly. And particularly with independent theatre in this regard, in terms of the way that we operate with occasionally profit share and things like that, we can't say to a cast of 15, okay, we'll take the next 3 weeks off work and rehearse 9 to 5.
Yeah.
We have to kind of work around people's lives and because it is such a huge commitment, and actors are, relatively unappreciated in that regard sometimes. That we can't just ask them to drop everything just because we're doing a show.
Yeah, that must be such a massive thing for you guys, just trying to get everyone in the one place at the one time. Must be so hard.
Yeah, we always have a policy of. Actually, no, I say we always have a policy. We had a policy where we really didn't like auditions. We really didn't like auditioning people. We liked being able to go, okay, cool, we know that person. We know what that person can do. We want to work with them. Let's find something that they can do.
Yeah.
That just more as a matter of being able to go, well, we know who's good. We know what's around. And I have a philosophy in acting in that it sort of relates to it's not what you know, it's who you know. But it's really, when you're doing a show, if you, for example, you do a show in Canberra Repertory and you're working with a director, that director will remember you.
Yeah.
And it becomes a thing of trying to, again, here we use that word, educate, of, if you're a good cast member and you know your stuff and you know what to do and all of that sort of stuff, that sometimes isn't readily apparent in an audition.
Yeah.
And so it really became that thing of where we ended up having this lovely sort of smorgasbord of people that we knew and loved to work with, that we could pick and choose. Yeah. Not that we wanted to create a sort of clique or an ensemble or anything like that. We were always very trying to keep an open mind about, okay, new people are coming in, because Canberra is such a transient town. There are people who worked with Everyman in our very first production, which was Someone to Watch Over Me in 2008.
Yeah.
None of them are here anymore.
Wow.
They've all moved on. And
where do the people generally go to? Do you think?
Well, Duncan Lay and Hannah Lay, who maybe listeners would remember. Hannah Lay was operations manager at the theatre for many years, and education and all that. But Duncan and Hannah, they've moved to the UK. They moved back to the UK. Duncan Driver's still around, but he's very heavily involved in Lakespeare now.
Right.
Mark Lowry, who also worked at the Canberra Theatre Centre. There's a running theme here.
Yeah.
He was a stage manager with the Australian Ballet and all of that before he came to Canberra with his partner, and then they were here for 2 years, and I think they moved in 2011. And Mark's now still working as a stage manager for the Australian Ballet down in Melbourne. Well, I say down in Melbourne, if anything's happening.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. People sort of come in and out, and you suddenly find these amazingly talented people with experience that they've gone to NIDA or WAPA or wherever, and suddenly they're here in Canberra for some unknown reason. That's where life has taken them. So
that's cool. So you're getting people with all levels of experience, and they may not be actually working in the sort of theatre circles.
Or they have previously, and then they've moved to Canberra for whatever reason. They've come with a partner or something like that. But that's what's beautiful about this town, is that you end up with such a wide breadth of amazingly experienced people that you would not know off the street, and then all of a sudden you go, oh my God, you've done everything. Then the other beautiful thing about Everyman is that we sort of see this younger generation coming up through Canberra, and because the standard of community and independent theatre here in Canberra is so much higher. I mean, I can only speak from my experience in WA. I was gobsmacked when I moved over here and was like, oh, these people are really good. I've got to be better.
Cool.
Because because of the concentration and the fact that I honestly don't know what it is about why Canberra is such a theatre rich / talented town, if that makes sense.
Has that changed over time as well? Has it sort of gotten... Has your talent pool gotten bigger, or have you found it's gotten more narrow?
I think it fluctuates.
Yeah, right.
I think it goes up and down. But I also think that it's... what's really interesting is you've got these young people coming up through some of the drama programs that we've got here. I mean, Joe Woodward, for example, is, probably... I don't want to, single people out, but I know that most of the kids that go through drama at Darramala and through Joe Woodward are incredibly well equipped
Right.
or much more well equipped than I would have seen back in WA or anything like that for for theatre and that. So, so you end up with these, bolts of, oh wow, you're really quite good for 19. That you don't expect. So that's what I really love about Everyman, and that's what I think we were so excited about with Romeo and Juliet. We had this wonderful cast of young people that were all sort of either just starting out or emerging artists. There we go. There's my ACT grant term. But that sort of feel to it. So that was really, really exciting. And I mean, the last time I think we had that with a cast of young people was when we did History Boys at the Courtyard. That
was great.
Which was great.
Yeah.
So
very cool. Tell us about young Jarrad West. So you grew up in the West.
I did. Yes. Grew up in the hills of Perth.
Yeah.
In a suburb called Maida Vale.
Right.
And then Lesmurdie.
These sound like great
They
places.
are. Lesmurdie Senior High School was where I went to high school, and they had. It was just looking back now, I just go, what were they thinking? But our school was surrounded by bush, surrounded. You had to kind of look for it. Right. In the middle of the bush, and then they put us in green and brown uniforms,
so everyone could escape.
And then wondered why we all ran off, running off into the bush just to have a durry in between classes.
Did you like school? Was that sort of something that you were?
No,
not for you.
I mean, this was 94 to 98,
right?
So, world was a bit different back then. And hills of Lesmurdie, whilst the hills of Perth are generally stereotyped as artist communes and visual artists and I've got a pottery studio out the back. It was all the people who went to Lesmurdie Senior High School in my era ended up being boilermakers and turners and fitters and stuff.
Right.
So
okay.
There's the young gay kid, the only one in his drama class, the only male in his drama class.
Really?
The only man in his dance class. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't make it easy for myself. And then
so you had all these Boilermakers to be.
Yeah, I know. And then
and they're incredibly creative.
You're going to dance at the school assembly. Am I? Okay, sure. That'll go down well.
Oh.
So that was a different time, but it was sort of, and then I sort of moved over here in 2006.
Yeah, right.
2006, yeah.
What brought you over?
What did bring me over? That's a really good question. I think I'd had enough of WA in terms of, and this is probably going to get me in trouble, but the independent / professional theatre scene in WA, back then when I was there in 2006, it might have all changed now, who knows, was very insular,
right?
In terms of, you'd look at PTC, Perth Theatre Company, which I don't think exists anymore, but you'd look at the cast lists of their shows and you'd be like, oh cool, it's the same 5 people,
right?
So unless you, and again it had a little bit of that cultural cringe, and unless you'd moved away, done something fabulous and come back, then they wouldn't put you in, if that made sense.
Right.
So it kind of felt, and because it's a much bigger city, a much bigger place, it kind of felt very difficult to break through to anything new. You could spend your entire life just doing your local rep or local amateur stuff and community stuff, and never really move on to anything. And it was interesting that when I moved here, that's when I sort of hit upon the idea that I could actually make my own work.
Yes.
Which I suppose I could have done in Perth had I been older and wiser. But I moved over here because my brother lived here, and I was going to be here for 6 weeks, and then I was going to, I don't know, move off to Sydney or Melbourne, and that was 14 years ago. 14 years ago.
It's been a long 6 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
So that live performance, that love of live performance sort of grabbed you from a pretty early age by the sounds of it then?
It was my mother.
Okay.
It was my mother, actually, who my mum and dad met when they were doing community theatre in Guildford in WA, at the Garrick Theatre in Guildford. That's where they met.
It's in your blood.
I know. And then, of course, they separated, and then Mum started doing shows and dragging me along to rehearsals because, babysitters are expensive.
Yeah.
And so I sort of grew up watching stuff and being involved and, started working backstage when I was in high school and
Wow,
all that. And, it kind of, I guess I never thought of anything else really. It sort of was that thing of,
this is who I am.
This is who I am and this is what I do. And I was on stage, I think 1992 was my first time on stage when I was 11, 10 or 11, I think.
Yeah.
And then it sort of grew from there. And then my mum got me an agent and did some kids' TV shows over in WA.
Oh, cool.
Child Star.
Still have all the old tapes and stuff?
I actually found... It's on one of my episodes is on YouTube, and I found it the other day, and
Awesome.
I was like, no, because I had beautiful hair.
Oh, really?
I had like hair down to here, and I was the school bully, and
Amazing. What was the show?
it was Ship to Shore.
No, you were in Ship to
Shore. I was in Ship to Shore, and I was also in another one that no one knows called Fast Tracks, which
okay.
I was a lead in Fast Tracks, and then I was also the school bully in that one as well, so typecast.
Wow.
But then they renewed it for a second season, and my character disappeared and was never spoken of again.
Oh, what?
Yeah, they rang me the day before we were to start filming and said, "Oh, sorry, we've rewritten the script. You're not in the show anymore." I was like, for a 16-year-old,
How heartbreaking.
oh, for a 16-year-old kid, that was not fun. That was super dupes fun. But yeah, they and my character didn't even they just pretended he never existed. I'm like Mandy in season 1 of The West Wing.
I've not seen West Wing, but I'll take your word.
She disappears. She's never spoken of again.
Really?
Yeah. Between seasons 1 and 2. Yeah.
I didn't think you could get away with that these days. Tell us about the founding of Everyman. So you and two other people, you said...
It was me and Duncan Driver and Duncan Lay back in 2008. And then it sort of grew and morphed, and Nikki Fitzgerald sort of came on as our executive producer and stage manager and all of that. And then, of course, Duncan moved away to the UK, and Duncan Driver's sort of busy with children and Lakespeare and all of that. So it's kind of, at the moment, it's sort of me, Nikki, Chris Zuber, and Cole Hilda, who, but I mean, we've got so many other people that work for us, and the last couple of weeks we've been doing a series of all the women who work with Everyman on a Friday, sort of just saying,
yeah, I've seen a bit of that. You've got plenty of people around, don't you?
Yeah, and that's been really good. So cool. But that's sort of how we started, and we started with I don't know whether or not it's politically correct to say that sort of view now, but we started with that view of we wanted to talk about masculinity and sexuality and men's stories, not at the exclusion of women's stories or any stories about different genders or anything like that, but just that there were better stories that could be told. There were more positive stories that could be told about men, and there were explorations that we could talk about that were not exclusionary to anyone else's experience, but just in 2008, 2009, it sort of felt like there was, rightly deserved negative coverage of masculinity and toxic masculinity and all of that sort of stuff. But we wanted to be able to go, cool, okay, so there's all this toxic masculinity and stories about that. Let's try and make it so that we're not, we can still have a bit of hope. Yeah. If that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
So hence the name.
Hence the name Everyman. But then it sort of morphed into, no, we just want to tell stories.
Yeah,
so it became a sort of more, and I think that's because it was 3 men who started the company. And then, we've been led by, there's been so many wonderful people and humans that have joined the company that we've kind of morphed into more, okay, let's just tell stories about, and we still do tell stories about sexuality. I mean, me being a gay man, that's what I'm interested in. I always think that, if I can tell a story about someone's experience, and there's a kid sitting in the front row who doesn't know who he is and suddenly watches a play and goes, oh, okay, maybe life might be okay, then I've done my job.
Yeah, cool.
It's all part of the gay agenda.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the idea in terms of, and that's what I think I wanted growing up. I wanted to be able to be told it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so if I can do that with my storytelling, even though I don't want to be known as a the gay theatre company, because that's boring and kind of, narrowing. So we do try and find a real blend, which is why I have straight men as sort of co-artistic directors who can pull me into line and say, yeah, no, let's not. So that, but really that's the thing in terms of last year, for example, we did Queers, which was probably one of my favourite theatrical experiences ever. Yeah. Just purely for the whole immersive, weird part of it, that everyone sort of walked in and went, this is a pub.
I'm in a bar.
What is this? Yeah. What's going on? Sort of thing. And then Assassins was, completely different. So that's what I like, is being able to go, okay, cool, we can tell these different stories and be off the wall and strange and weird. Was that
a tough time in your life when you were trying to figure yourself out and your place in the world with a sort of theatre background, mum and dad?
Yeah. And definitely, like I said, in terms of, Boilermakers and Fitters and Turners Incorporated at Les Mooney Senior High, I think I realised I was gay when I was 14, I think that's when I started telling everyone. Yeah. That didn't go well. But that was, everyone does these things when they're young and back then, of course, as soon as you said that at 14, you were told, oh, you're just confused, or, it's a phase, or you'll grow out of it, or yeah. Why would you purposefully, like, that's the thing that always baffles me. Why would you say that? If you're going to grow out of it, why bring it up? Like, you would be a bit more certain to say it out loud. Anyway, yes. Especially as National Coming Out Day was yesterday, I think. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But yeah, so that was tough. And so I think that I didn't really have very many sort of role models or anyone to model behaviour on, or anyone who had gone through that sort of situation when I was that age. So, nowadays the visibility and all of that is a lot stronger, and that's why I love Canberra being the progressive town that it is. Yeah, yeah. In terms of, it's really, no one bats an eyelid, which is great. Which is, I think just shows how far we've come. We still have so much further to go, but well, hence you wanting to put on those shows for those kids sitting in that front row. And just being able to tell those stories, because I think sometimes a lot of that stuff, you can watch it and go, okay, cool, it's two men who are in love, but there's a straight couple who go, well, I've been through that. I've been through that same situation, and this is the thing, when you're talking about love stories and relationships and things like that, the gender of the people doesn't matter. The universality of the whole thing, I think is also the really important thing in terms of getting people on side, in terms of we're not all that special, we're not all that different, we have so many things in common that the othering that happens in the media and all that sort of stuff just is corrosive. And if we can put out stuff that to try and mitigate that, then that's the job that we have.
A lot more similarities than differences.
Yeah, exactly.
You did speak a second ago about sort of your favourite experience was with Queers. Do you think that's probably your favourite show that you guys have put on, or is that hard? It's like picking children.
It is a bit like picking. Yeah, I loved Queers, I think, because of the way it all fell together. Yeah. Because originally we were meant to be doing Death of a Salesman. Ah. Yeah, we were originally going to be doing Death of a Salesman in that slot in the courtyard, and we're all set. We were just about to have our first read through, and then one of the actors said, "Oh, so we close on this date," and we all went, "No, we close the following week." And they're like, "Oh, I'm going to Vietnam," and we were like,
"Scrunch."
Okay, well, it's not helpful. So then I rang around and tried to find someone else to replace it, and then could not. And eventually I just sort of threw my arms up in the air and went, okay, well, let's do something different then.
Oh, wow.
And so Queers, it's in something that I'd read, because I went to the UK earlier and just picked up, I always go to the National Theatre and raid their bookstore, because that's my favourite place.
Awesome.
And I'd picked up Queers, which is the book of monologues that had been sort of commissioned by the BBC, and thought, can we do this on stage? Yeah. And then we sort of played around, and it was Steph Roberts, the co-director, who went, why don't we set it in a pub?
Cool.
And as soon as that idea hit, everything sort of started to click and go into place. So I just don't know what else. I'm just trying to think what other shows we've done. History Boys was also great.
Yeah.
I loved History Boys. Sort of felt like a new start for Everyman a little bit in terms of I don't think we'd really worked with many of the cast before, and it was Chris Zuber's first time sort of directing for Everyman, and the way we did it in the round also really, and that's what I love about the Courtyard Studio as well, is the flexibility of that space.
Yeah. There's a lot of fans of that
Yeah.
space, actually.
Yeah.
The more we talk about that with the different artists, and people are a big fan of it.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that you just go, you can make it work
Yeah.
if you're clever about it. I mean, we did Rent in there,
Yeah.
We full Broadway Rent in the Courtyard Studio.
That would have been amazing to see.
Which was incredibly loud, but but I think we ran from the 5th of December right through till like the 22nd of December in, what year was that, 2012?
Yeah.
We sold out.
Awesome.
It was one of those things. I remember it was around about, someone had just been elected to the ACT, because it was 2012, so it just had the ACT election.
Right.
And they were trying to get tickets, and they were ringing around, and we were like, no, you can't. Sorry, no.
I'd have to kick someone out.
Sounds bad. Yeah. Didn't vote for you. Yeah. So yeah, that's the sort of you can really have those sort of lightning in a bottle moments, I think, with a space like the Courtyard.
Do you have a favourite moment when you're putting on a show, whether it be those really early stages or rehearsal or show night or?
I loathe Bump Out with all of my heart and soul.
Well, that was going to be my next question.
Bump Out is just... Ugh. Anyway.
Okay.
You just kind of wish you could shut the door and go, bye!
Done! Yay! Let's all go.
Someone else will clean that up.
Off to the pub. Yeah.
I get excited. There's two things. One, when I'm directing, a lot of my stuff that I love when I love directing, because I'm not a musician, I'm not a composer or anything like that, but what I love when I'm directing is finding pieces of music.
Cool.
Finding music to use in a play. I'm very much a sort of find pieces of music that I think will fit as underscore or just intro, outro sort of things.
Right.
And so then, when you become best friends with the composer, that's when your life really starts to take off, because then you go, I want it to sound a bit like this. And then, as Xander did, he wrote this entire, Xander Unikovsky, I should say his full name. Yeah. He wrote this entire, theme for Queers that, he played throughout the whole thing. And every time we hear it now, we still cry. Aww. We still have, and so as a director, that's probably one of my favourite things, to start with the sound and start with the music, because I always imagine what it's like. Okay, if I'm in the audience and I'm sitting, the lights are going down, what's the first thing I want? What's the tone I want to set straight up? And that to me is always done through what's the first thing anyone hears when the lights are off. Yeah, right. But then I think probably the most exciting thing for me, which is also the most exhausting, is that first day of bump in, when you've got 5 days till you're open, and you sort of walk in on a Sunday morning and go, right, okay, cool, right, who's doing lights, who's doing this, where's the truck, sort of,
where's the gaff,
that sort of stuff. So and I'm always it's getting the coffee beforehand on the drive over to the theatre, wherever you are, going, okay, right, what do we want to get done by today? And that's when you start to see it all start to take shape, and your brain, your mind goes, okay, this is sort of what I imagined, but we now have to improvise. We now have to. Yep. This is not going to work here. That sort of thing. So
you sound like you're a problem solver in amongst all those other hats that you wear. What's like the weirdest problem that you've come across and gone, this is a strange problem to have, but a problem nonetheless?
When we did Normal Heart, I remember we were really worried about, because we didn't really have a set. We didn't really have a set design.
Right.
And we had thought, we'll go in there and we'll see what we can do. And Karen Vickery, who was the director, was like, well, she'd shown me that I think the Broadway production at the time had all the names of people who had died from HIV/AIDS,
right,
sort of projected all around the walls. And I remember we were like, okay, cool. Well, we can't project anything because we don't have that much money. But so eventually we ended up, we did a hell of a lot of research and looked at all of the AIDS victims in Australia. In terms of how many people had died since 1981 onwards,
right?
And found the list of names that were all on the Australian Memorial AIDS quilt, and then basically every cast member's job was we ended up getting these rolls of butcher's paper, and every cast member's job was to just write names on these and then that's what we wrapped the theatre in. And it actually, what was really good is that before we did that, the echo, because we didn't want curtains around. And so sound battening, the echo was terrible. Like no one could hear a thing, and it would ring up into the rafters every time I yelled.
Yeah.
But the butcher's paper coming around just kind of dampened it enough that we could hear each other, which was good. But
two birds with...
it still worked really, really well, except for the parts where we had the butcher's paper around the rostra, the German Rossi. Right. And because I'm clumsy AF, I would just step in it and step on it and put my foot through it. So I'd be putting my foot through someone's name who we should remember. I'd be like, oh God, oh sorry, I'm playing Ned Weeks. I'm supposed to be better than this sort of thing. So yeah.
Oh, very good. Have you ever come across someone who you would describe as your worst audience member? There's a couple that are springing to mind.
Oh, actually, I'm just trying. When we did God and Pool No Water, which was back in, I want to say 2013, 14, I think. And God was the Woody Allen play that was just a silly farce, the one-act silly farce that I was wearing basically a piece of sackcloth, and that was my Greek robe. Right. It's not pretty. And then, but Pool No Water was a Mark Ravenhill play that was all very sort of spoken word, poetry sort of thing. None of the lines were allocated. The four of us sort of just allocated our lines in basis of who we think these people are. Ah. And then there's a scene where we had to go skinny dipping with no pool, of course, but we were imagining the pool. A lot of it was sort of make-believe. We had to go skinny dipping, so of course we had to get naked, and we're in the Courtyard studio in the portrait mode. And Duncan Lay said, at the time, he's like, no, don't worry, it's going to be very dim lighting. Rah, rah. We all had to go skinny dipping in this pool that didn't have any water in it, and we didn't realise. And the person that house we were staying at dived in beforehand, broke their neck. And we were all naked, and we were all whatever, and then we all had to sort of huddle around the body, and so sort of squatting and everything. And the lights were off, but we're all completely naked, going, "This is just." And we kept getting told, "No, you can't see anything. You can't see anything." Meanwhile, we could see the front row going, doing that sort of face. But then there was a moment where Duncan just decided that it was more fun to then turn the fluoro lights on as we were all there, because that was the change into the next scene. Right. So you watch these four actors scurrying about the stage trying to find their clothes in the dark as the lights flashing. And I remember there was one night that happened, and all we heard as we were running to get our clothes and be the first one to actually cover ourselves was, "Oh no." Just from some old woman in the audience. Me, trying to cover my bits, and then there's this woman, "Ah, no."
Not helping.
We were like, "Yeah, we know. We're trying to put them back on." So
thank you for your input.
Yeah.
So how do you pick your shows? Is it something that just organically happens, and it happens to come across your lap at the right time?
Yeah, I think it's sort of just stuff that I read, and what's been really lovely actually about lockdown, if we can say anything about lockdown, is that we started to do a fortnightly play reading club.
Oh, cool.
So we would do it when it first started. It was all done via Zoom and all sort of very just a way of keeping in touch. So every Sunday fortnight, and so we would pick a play and allocate the roles, and everyone would read them and things. So that's been really great in terms of that's continued on, even though the ACT has been quite lucky. We still have our Sunday play club.
That's great.
And the last one we read, I think, was, where did we read last? Nell Gwyn. So relatively newish plays, and for example, I think the next one I'm doing is Posh, which is by Laura. At Home I'm Darling we've done, and all that sort of stuff. So a lot of that stuff, because I'm a terrible reader of plays, I have to have someone bash me over the head with it and force me to read first. Musical theatre, I'm a lot more like, cool, I've listened to that soundtrack to death, so I know that one. But that's been really lovely. So a lot of the stuff that we find has just been stuff that's come across our desk or come across our consciousness, and kind of I'd been in the History Boys when it was done back in 2011, so that's what made me go, well, why don't we do, because we could see all these young boys coming up that we thought were really, really talented. I mean, I know in the future there are musicals that we want to do, but it's a matter of, musicals are a lot more expensive and a lot more time consuming to put on. So we try and limit that to one musical every 3 years, just purely because,
it's a lot.
It's a lot. But yeah, in terms of choosing the plays itself, it really just is a matter of someone comes to us with an idea or knows something, and we go from there.
Yeah, cool. You must be very busy. You've got, obviously things have changed a little bit in COVID time, but there's always sort of looking ahead. What's the next show going to be, and working on the current one? And but do you have any other hobbies that sort of chew up a bit of time, or a guilty pleasure that you're like, this has to come in?
Look, I mean, don't separate me from my TV and my PlayStation.
Yeah, great.
Ever. Anyone who wants to go out with me, they need to understand that. If you're listening out there, man of my dreams. Don't come between me and my Xbox, PlayStation, or Nintendo Switch, and we'll be fine.
Awesome.
So I do. Yeah, that's just something I do. I mean, Animal Crossing has taken up so much of my life over the last 4 months. It's
this
ridiculous.
game is a phenomenon. Like, there are a number of people at the Canberra Theatre Centre that are playing this game. Like,
it's terrible. Every morning I have to wake up and just double check what's going on, say hi to my villagers. It's like, do you remember back in the early in 2007, 8, 9, when Facebook first started, and everyone played Farmville?
Yeah.
I feel like we're back there.
Okay.
I feel like we're back there now. I have to go and, shake my trees and it's anyway. And something might be happening. There might be a new visitor to the island today, so we must visit. It's ridiculous. It's
so funny.
Anyway, but that's really been sort of it over the last... I have but I mean, what's also been great is I'm back rehearsing stuff now, so I'm actually able to go to a rehearsal, which I didn't realise I would miss until, I had rehearsal last night for Absurd Person Singular, and we've got monthly rehearsals for Mamma Mia, because who knows when that's going to go up, but that's looking like April, May next year. So.
Okay, so this is sort of your coming out of COVID plan is already in place.
Yeah.
So hit us with those ones that are coming up for you.
So Absurd Person Singular opens on the 19th of November. That's at Canberra Rep.
Yep.
So it's 19th of November to 5th of December. So it was great that the 50%, capacity was increased, because now that we can have more tickets there.
So you don't even have to apply for an exemption for that now. That's great.
No, so because Rep was operating under a COVID safe plan where they could have 47 people, and now that's doubled again to 95. So that's great, because Rep seats 190 normally.
Okay.
So and then Mamma Mia, of course, we were 4 weeks away from opening Mamma Mia when everything locked down. So we're trying to keep that Greek fire burning.
Yes.
And that's looking like going ahead, hopefully in April, May.
Right.
And then there's Priscilla, which auditions this weekend, which hopefully performing in July, August next year. So
it's massive. So you've got essentially 3 shows on the go. At the moment.
Well, and that's the thing. I think.
Wow.
I mean, Absurd Person Singulars will be great, and that'll be done by 5th of December. But next year's musicals all the way for me.
Wow, so, cool. Yeah. You just said a moment ago you were only doing them once every 3 years.
Oh well, this is I'm directing for Free Rein, so it's not me. Thankfully,
right.
Thankfully, it's not. This is just
I thought you were breaking your own rule.
No, this is my side gig. This is my side gig of directing for other companies, which is
cool.
great. So,
yeah.
Everyman, we are still formulating plans for Everyman for next year and the year beyond, in terms of, I think, having Romeo and Juliet cancelled was a big blow. Are
we going to see that? Or is it going to happen, do you think?
I would love to say yes.
Yeah.
it really just depends on, because everyone I think is still in that scramble mode of what's happening, when can we do things, when can we make a plan, and particularly with venues as well. Venues are going, okay, how do we slowly but surely and safely navigate our way out of this? This is the last thing we want, is for anything to go backwards. So trying to plan anything, I mean, the folk festival being cancelled is an example of that.
That's just huge, isn't it?
Yeah, God. two years in a row is amazing. So
before I let you go, well, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me. It's great fun
coming in. But I want you to tell us sort of, why is it important for people to get behind local theatre companies like yours and support them and have them keep doing what they're doing?
I think I can only go back to what I've just seen in the last 24 hours in the UK. I don't know whether or not you've seen it, but the ad from Her Majesty's government. It's a ballet dancer tying on her shoes, and it says, I can't remember the caption of it, but it's something like, Fatima has a huge career ahead of her in cybersecurity. She just doesn't know it yet. And then it's like, retrain, blah blah blah, because the Chancellor of the Exchequer over there has said, artists just need to retrain for another job. Thanks very much. And it's just this thing of this, and I mean, I have friends over in the UK who are just losing their minds over it, because, I mean, how to start with, it's just so insulting that this woman who is a ballet dancer ostensibly in this story, is not valued and is not appreciated, and the government is now telling her to get a proper job, that sort of thing. And I think that it's sort of, for me, is that thing of why is it important to support independent theatre, local theatre of any type, and it's, again, we go back to the government's response to arts and artists in this pandemic and in this COVID shutdown of just complete dismissal and denial that there's a problem, and ignoring the fact. I mean, I've got friends who are in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and they haven't worked, and I mean, they've managed to get JobKeeper, but the fact is that that's all very well and good, but that's all going to come down. There will come a point where it becomes financially unviable for this show to stay open. And for this show to keep paying its actors and all that sort of stuff. And the fact that there has been no actual plan of for this at all is just, in my words, criminal, and is something that we should be talking about a lot more. I think that, we're lucky in terms of, at the Canberra Theatre Centre, we've been, with our day jobs, we've been kept moving and kept running, and it's been that thing of, okay, well, we need to just try and find as much support as we can for what we can do and how we can help and how we can do that. And I think that audiences as well, when everything reopens again, it's that same thing of, the more you support independent and local theatre, the more you are creating yourself, you, the audience member, you are creating jobs and employment and opportunity that would not necessarily be there without your support. So audience members can think of themselves as philanthropists in that regard. And I think, that, support your Sydney Theatre Company, support all of those wonderful, wonderful institutions that have been around for years, but there's also those up-and-comers and the emerging artists, there we go, there's that phrase again, who can only get better with your support and with your encouragement and with your ticket sales.
Yeah. Buy a ticket. Awesome.
Yeah.
Jarrad West from Everyman Theatre, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat to me, mate.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope I didn't waffle too much.
Not at all. I've enjoyed it. It was very entertaining, and best of luck with the next 12 months and beyond.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.